Looks like it's time. Just gonna take that off. We'll go ahead and get started. Call this meeting to order. We appreciate everybody being here tonight. To begin, roll call. Looks like everyone is here. We're not missing anyone, so appreciate everybody being here tonight. We'll have Councilman White give us an opening prayer, and then following the prayer, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Amen.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the first item that we have is our minutes of the last meeting. Are there any amendments or corrections or questions on those minutes?
I move to accept them then.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We have at this time our public comment period. Anyone in the public's welcome to come and comment up to 3 minutes. And if you choose to, yeah.
Yeah, we did the other.
I think we approved the
Yeah.
minutes last time. Oh, good
So do we-
catch.
Do we
So
need
let's
to
go
approve?
back. Well,
Oh, I thought it was doing both, but
I
I
think-
didn't say that.
let's do, I think it would be best for the record to approve them separately. That's okay.
Okay.
So we have the February 16th minutes and the March 2nd minutes. Good catch. Sorry. So
I'll move to approve my first, well, how do I do my first
we'll
one?
just say move to approve. You can approve them both. I just specify the two. So
Okay. I move to approve both of them.
which are the February
February, what
12th?
was,
Is that it? 16th
and March
and the March
2nd.
2nd. Okay.
Yes.
We got
There we
it. So
go.
we have that motion. Councilman Baird, do you second that motion? Okay. And we'll vote again. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That take care of it for you, Lee? Perfect. Okay. All right, back to our comment period. So anybody like to take opportunity up to 3 minutes? And if you would, just stand at the podium, talk in the mic, and state your name, if you would. Yes, sir.
My name is Paul Loughton. I live at 121 North 600 East. I've been a resident in Roosevelt for 33 years. I have come to express my concern over the fee schedule that was passed last month, specifically the secondary water fee. Now, if I may, I have information for the board. How do I pass that out?
Sure, just go ahead and you can pass it out to him.
Okay. Let me leave one for me, and I made 5. My concern is on at least 3 levels. The first is the magnitude of the increase. As I understand the fee, it will be $6 a month per month for the entire year, on secondary water as a service charge, I assume, or however you term that. It needs to be understood that's $72 per the year. That's a month of senior lunches for me, and I'd like you to consider that. It's a rather substantial increase, especially when you look at how it projects through the rest of the year. That is the first number you will see. My water bill for the city will be $373.75 if I use last year as a guide, and I don't expect to use any more water than I did last year. My secondary water, if you look at it, was $37. I used $4, $5 per month, $5, $5, $7, $7, and $4. There was not 1 month that my bill to the secondary water surpassed the service charge. The total bill was $37 for the year. I will be billed $60 service charge. I do not understand this taxation. It is totally out of line. Now, if you want to consider an alternative, I could totally do away with my secondary water and simply use city water. I will save $50 a year if I do that, which is completely against the purpose of what the secondary water was meant to provide. That if we continue, last year I paid $410.75 for water usage. This year it will be $470.75. If I terminate and go to city water to use the same amount of water, I will pay $428.50. I don't know how you can explain that to me. Now, the point is the secondary water was put in to conserve culinary water. We understand that water is at a very expensive commodity here. How can you bill the small user so much without explaining that the big user is paying an equal amount? And if they're not, something is wrong in Denmark. I would like to also mention there was not a single notice that I could find anywhere that this was happening. No information. When has the city of Roosevelt done anything without including a flyer in the bill? I don't care if it's cleanup. I don't care if it's Holly Fair. I don't care what it is. This city doesn't do anything without first telling the public what they're doing. Can you find one notice that you sent that this was happening? And finally, before I get to the final argument, I am very concerned about the speed at which it happened. I got the bill in March and noticed the fee. I went to Mayor Byrd and I was very pleased at how I was received. And he explained to me how things happened, and he told me how I could be more informed. Thank you. That was appreciated. But my concern is the first indication of anything was happening was the February notes from your February meeting, in which some entity in the city was instructed to review the fee schedule. Apparently he did and made a report. And in March, the city council not only accepted his report, proposed the fee increase, and passed it within 5 minutes. That is just not acceptable without an opportunity to have input. I don't understand how that can happen. Finally, if you will look at the argument, forgive me, I am getting old and this is normal. Users were told by joining the system, city water would be more available and therefore both systems would be more effective and less costly. Now it seems that only the large consumers will benefit, while the captive small users, like me, who joined in good faith to help the city manage its water resources, will bear the financial burden unequal to the benefits received. Any service charge should be prorated to the amount the service is used, and in line with the original purpose for making water available at lower cost while conserving the availability of culinary water, which was the purpose for the system when it was put in. I spent hours talking with Mayor Ryan as they were putting it in to find out if I even wanted to be on it. And he explained it, and I took a gamble. And now I'm captive. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. I'd like to address that, but we won't right at the moment. Are there any others that would like to take opportunity?
Great argument, by the way. My name is Bonnie Needles. I've been living in Roosevelt for 14, 15 years. I'm still in search of the elusive rotomill for my road. Well, it's not my road, it's your road. And as a city road, it's potholes, that washboard thing, it's getting worse. And also and a secondary thing, is there any way or what can be done about the trash that's being thrown from the existing bike path that goes up over the crest of the hill around where I am? I go up there all the time just to pick up on the road. People just dump crazy stuff up there, and I pick it up all the time. But ideally, it shouldn't be there to begin with. It's on the bike path up there. Well, who else is going to throw it but the people using the bike path? It's not on the road part, on the bike path part. So maybe a trash can or something.
That's a good question. That is private property, and we've talked about putting barricades and things like that so people can't access that other than bikes. We found couches and things. I don't think bikers take the couches in, but there is a lot of trash up there, so we get that. So
Well, it goes across the crest of the hill where they go over the road, and then they go across the crest
sure.
from the Constitution Park, across that crest, across the road, and then across the other crest. And I know it's up there because they painted rocks up there with the red paint marks so that the bikers know where to go.
Gotcha.
Well, that's all private property.
Most of it, yes.
I think I would be a little upset if it was my property.
And Mrs. Needles, you own U-Haul, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So she came in, and she said she was going to come in each month and remind us that she needs rotomill on that road. And I don't see our public works director here again tonight, but will we pass the message on to him and see what we can do if there's any surplus?
Surplus, yeah.
So
Even if you only go from right up to where the roads meet like this, that's fine, because it's worse when you go up the hill.
sure.
And I've heard an argument that says, well, it'll increase the road traffic. Are you kidding me? You've seen the traffic on this road? I need a speed sign up there. There's a little white pickup that I swear that they think it's the Indianapolis 500.
I don't even own a white pickup, so I don't know what you're talking about.
That's good.
So
Thank you very much.
thank you. All right, let's are there any others that would like to take an opportunity at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll move forward, but I would like to address very quickly what Mr. Loughton has brought up. And after thinking about that and talking to him, so one of the changes that was made before most of us was they took the fee schedules from an ordinance to a resolution. By doing that, the fee schedules no longer needed to be have public hearings and things like that. I remember when that happened, and I didn't like the idea. However, I didn't even think twice about it until he came in my office, and I feel like it would be appropriate. I talked to our city manager and our city attorney today, even though it's in a resolution, we should have an ordinance that specifies any fees, taxes, or anything else, although in a resolution, should become, should be, come before a public hearing so that people can comment. I did explain to him how you can get online. The same packet that we have as city council can be accessed by the public a week in advance. So you can educate yourself that way. But a flyer in the mail, a public hearing, I think is definitely, I would rather have these conversations on the front end of the decision rather than on the back end of the decision. So I appreciate that. I think it warrants that at our next city council meeting, I know we're going to be strapped for time in April because of the ULTC convention. And so it may be May until we get to that, but we will get to that and we will address those issues. So appreciate you coming before us today. First item is something that I have for the council. It's just a lot line adjustment. I'll go ahead. Yes.
Can I just interrupt? Will you follow up with me or should I follow up with you?
You know what? Why don't you, do you have, put your phone number by your name on the thing? Okay. I was going to say, I don't even use a phone book anymore. So put your number there and I'll. So do you want to pull up that lot line adjustment? This is something I know we've talked about as a council, but we've also talked about in planning and zoning. Lot line adjustments probably, well, not probably, but really don't need to be coming before the council or the planning and zoning commission. Is something that our building inspector or our planner, city planner can do. However, our ordinance still states that we need to, so we will. What this is, I have a piece of property in close to the Cottonwood Creek subdivision. That is not looking right. It kind of is, but mostly isn't. Is that the right plat? Okay, it's zoomed in too much. Can you zoom out a little bit? Oh, it's just broken. There you go. Okay, so if you'll notice, are there any questions from the council on that?
Associated with plate on it, or making that the links.
Yeah, so we're going through Sunrise Title is the title company. We've already agreed on a price. They'll be handling all the deeds and everything else. And so once it's approved here, I'll take the plat back to Sunrise Title, and then Clayton and I will come in and settle through them. So, any other questions? Okay, great.
You and Clayt are all in agreement and finish up your negotiations.
Okay, great. So I have a motion, and just so you know, he did sign the plat, so, and it's been notarized. So it had to be him. We have a second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Do we have somebody from the Duncan subdivision tonight? Fantastic. We'll just keep moving right along. Strata, Tyler, Dave, thanks for being with us tonight.
Those two come stand up here as well, too. I did email over a presentation, Scott. I've got it on a thumb drive as well, if that's better for you. Okay, great. And it's fairly large, so if it's quick. That's the first step. Sure there's not a virus on it.
Trust.
Not everyone has the speeds that you guys do at
Oh,
Strata
yeah.
Building.
I hope you have fast speeds here. When you're giving a presentation to your high school math teacher, you just hope that there's a semblance of credibility, right, in what you offer. No, it's good to be with you while they're pulling that up. Yeah, we just really appreciate the opportunity to take a few minutes and provide a broadband update for you. Roosevelt City's a great partner. We're thrilled to have our headquarters here, and it's been a great relationship. So we appreciate all you guys do, and I hope that you feel that appreciation from Strata's perspective. Our intent tonight was just to provide a very brief update of broadband projects in the Uinta Basin, and specifically here in Roosevelt City. I have brought with me Scott Wickel, the military mask in the back, I guess. That's how we identify each other, with masks now. And Dave Ryan here in the front row, which I believe you know both of them. They're here for technical support if we have questions and any ongoing questions that you may have as a city. So you can jump to the next slide for me. So we all understand and recognize more than ever the importance of high-speed broadband connectivity over the last year. Strata's focused on utilizing fiber optics as our main and primary source of broadband delivery for the last probably two and a half decades. So we've been doing fiber to the prem for a long period of time. Our most recent count of fiber locations that we've passed here in the Uinta Basin is 9,550, and we've been targeting for several years 1,000 new locations a year. So the important thing to note there, as we'll see later in the slide deck, is this is the same service, as we've mentioned, that many laud and metropolitan areas as it's being delivered by the likes of Google Fiber and Utopia and others. So this is gigabit connectivity. Fiber really provides a very highly reliable connection and just an immense amount of scalability for the future. So it's obviously our preferred medium. If you want to jump forward, the next slide, just maybe if you can, there you go. This map is not really effective because it's looking at the Uinta Basin as a whole, but it shows you fiber zones completed throughout the Uinta Basin, and kind of gives you a perspective of the work that's being done all across our service territory. On the right, you see a list of 13 zones that have already been basically announced and are in planning to be completed this year. And then there in the bottom, you see the big bubble that indicates that there will be 6 additional zones announced this year as part of the connect.stratanetworks.com online tool, which I will also be describing. I hope you're familiar with it, but if you're not, we'll make sure that we cover it tonight as well. Jump forward another slide for me, if you would. So this one is not directly impacting Roosevelt City, but it impacts the Uinta Basin as a whole, so we want to make sure we mention it. Many of you probably recall that last February we were really excited when we had representatives from DC, the USDA, specifically the Rural Utility Service, come out to the Uinta Basin. They joined us at Big Run Ranches, which is owned by Dusty Olson in White Rocks, and we announced this. They announced that Strata had been selected to receive $23.6 million in grant loan funding to deploy fiber optics to many of the really high-cost areas in some of the most rural parts of the Uinta Basin. So it's important to note that that's happened. We really wish we could say that we've made significant headway there, but we've been in the environmental approval processes, which I think many of us are familiar with when it relates to federal projects and federal funding. And I'll talk a little bit about the timelines with the environmental approvals on the next slide, but we really also want to mention that we applied. So the $600 million that you see referenced there in the first bullet, that's an annual number that the federal government has been issuing out in this program. And so we reapplied in round 2, and we're hopeful that we will get some additional funding for additional zones and additional locations on top of the 3,000 that we referenced there in round 1. So we're waiting on an announcement there. Most of those funds have already been announced, but we're crossing our fingers and hopeful that Strata will get, the Uinta Basin will get a second round of funding. If you'll jump to the next slide. So really the only key takeaway from this particular slide is what I mentioned before. The reconnect projects right now are tied up in environmental approvals. We are required to approve the entire project prior to starting any of them. And from our perspective, just to put that in scope, there's over 40 PFSAs is what they call them, funded service areas. And so we've got to get approval for all of those specific areas before we start any. And Dave can speak to this better than I can, but obviously we're working with several different jurisdictions to get those approvals on environmentals. So the important one right there is the projected start time. We're hopeful that we can get started on these projects this summer. Next slide, please. So now specific to Roosevelt City, this map is an indication of fiber projects that have already been completed in Roosevelt City. You can see that a great percentage is already covered. We feel like this map is a really good illustration of the efforts that have already been made. I don't have a percentage of locations covered, but I will get that number and pass it back to you. And obviously the one that's more important now is the next slides, which will show you the zones that we have planned for the upcoming year here in Roosevelt specifically. 3 different zones that are planned. The one there by the junior high is already in progress. You've probably, many of you, as you've been dropping your kids off at school and traveling there, have seen our crews there doing micro trenching and laying in conduit and getting ready on that particular project. When they complete that project, we'll transition immediately to the zone there on the left, which we're calling Skyline South. Is that correct? Well, I guess we'll see it on the map. Maybe Dave doesn't recall either. So these 3 zones, and then also the zone up on Cottonwood Creek. So you can jump forward. I think I've got one extra slide in there for North Duchesne, so you can skip that one. So that's the Cottonwood Creek zone. Gives you an idea of the area that will be covered there. Jump forward again. The junior high zone that's being covered or being constructed as we speak, and then the Skyline FDA, which will be transitioned to immediately after the junior high zone. If you want to jump forward a slide as well. So obviously it's great to have the service, but it's not great if the pricing on the services exceeds, or is too expensive relative to consumers' expectations. So another really important thing I want to mention tonight is a couple of months ago, we've gone through a significant pricing overhaul, which we're really excited about. You can see there the Strata Ultimate that's listed at $79.99 is the new price for gigabit per second service, residential price. And for comparison, I've outlined it there against the Utopia fiber options and the corresponding ISPs on the Utopia fiber network and their corresponding gigabit per second price. So once again, important to note, I think most people know this, but Utopia fiber and obviously Google fiber are strictly available in highly urbanized areas, and so the fiber to the home locations in Neola, for instance, that can get gigabit per second service, they pay that same rate that many customers are paying in many metropolitan areas that are on the Utopia fiber network. So we feel good about that price point and want to make sure everybody's well aware of that. Jump forward a slide. So I mentioned on one of my first few slides that we would be announcing 6 additional zones this year through the connect.stratanetworks.com tool. What this tool is, if you're not familiar with it, and obviously those that are here that are residents, we want to make sure you're well aware of this. We always feel like there's a slight disconnect between where Strata is planning to deploy fiber and where there's actually the greatest demand for fiber. We try to do the best we can to identify where the greatest demand exists, but it's a little bit difficult. So we've launched this tool. This tool is intended to be strictly that. If Councilmember Allen really wants fiber, I put him on the spot. I had to wake him up there for a minute. I was boring him. No, if Councilmember Allen wants fiber and doesn't currently have fiber, he can go to this URL. He can register his interest by simply keying in his address. Keys in his address, it'll pop up a map. He'll be asked to confirm his location with a pin on the map and basically confirm and register that he's interested in fiber. He'll also see that we've broken up our service area into zones, and the zones are now competing against each other to show where the greatest demand for fiber exists. So when I say that we're going to be announcing 6 additional zones, at the end of every quarter, we will be selecting the 2 highest demand zones and putting them into the construction queue and design queue. So 2 zones actually, and this one works against Roosevelt City, so we want to make sure that we get the message out. We announced the first 2 zones in January, right, of this year. And the two highest demand indicating zones at that particular point was North Duchesne and one on North Vernal Avenue. So they got slotted in that first slide where you saw the 13 zones, and they will get built this year. So we encourage, obviously, Roosevelt City Council members, residents, and businesses, if you're not currently served with fiber and you want to get it done, help us work with your neighbors and help indicate that interest, and we will definitely get it built.
Tyler, just to,
Absolutely.
I went before and signed up and it did it different, and then I did it again today. Sent me an email to complete my, so that's a new thing you've done to complete. The first time I did it, it just showed me and said I was on the list. But today when I did it, it sent me an email and I had to finalize. the
Confirm.
process.
Yeah. I don't know what that issue is. I'll have to look into yours. That's the first time I've heard that it's done
Because like
that.
I
So,
said, I did it before and I just did it and there wasn't any confirmation email. It just signed me up. But this one signed me up now and then had me go in and put a little more information in.
gotcha. Yeah, I'll look into that. I'm not sure why you had that issue. I'll have to investigate when you submitted it the first time, and we'll look into it and see. But like Mr. Busenbark just stated, once he registers, he'll actually be able to see within his zone how his zone is comparing to other zones, and you'll be able to see which ones are ranked the highest. And once again, we're getting ready to announce two new zones, so look at that very specifically, work with your neighbors and push it really hard and get that bumped up, and you'll jump right into the construction queue. If you want to jump forward, I think there's a couple more slides. This just basically shows you that we've had over 1,000 people register on the site. Shows you how many different zones we have. Jump forward one more slide. This, and then I think you can advance and get a little bit of a zoom in on Roosevelt. So this shows you the different zones, red indicating that fiber is already delivered to those particular zones, and blue is indicating that those are zones that are eligible to compete, and they're working right now.
There's your zone, Don.
Yeah, it's the blue area.
Yeah, so for instance, on this one, you can see that when we screenshot this particular side, we were clicking on zone 1041, I believe. That's what I can't see very well, and it's at 30-something% to go. So once again, just want to make sure everyone's aware of that tool. We want your feedback. We want to build where the demand for better speeds and fiber is the highest. So help us out there.
Tyler, what's the percentage of people that, once you set up the fiber, what's the percentage of people in that area that elect to fiber?
So, yeah, that's probably a common misperception. So when we're going in and placing fiber in a zone, we're actually ripping and replacing your existing infrastructure. I shouldn't say ripping, but we're replacing it. And so a consumer doesn't necessarily have a choice to say, I don't want fiber. It's more about whether or not they want service in general. So if they're taking internet or taking home phone service, we will come into the zone and we will overbuild the entire zone with fiber, and we will deliver the services over the fiber instead of the copper. So 100% of the people that are in the zone that are taking services take it over fiber, if that answers your question.
But they're not all necessarily taking the internet. They may-
Yeah, absolutely.
they
Some may just take phone service. We now have services where you can just take internet. You don't have to take the corresponding phone service that goes with it.
And $79.99 is kind of the low,
That's the gigabit per second price.
so can they opt for
Yep.
lower?
Yeah. So, the entry level just broadband tier is 65. Yeah. So that just gives you basic broadband service, and the speed on that is 50 megabits per second.
Megabit?
Yeah.
So I'm
And
almost
so
out of-
the key, I shouldn't say the key, the primary pricing, or the majority of the pricing selection that most consumers take is our $99.99 bundle, which gives them the 50 meg plan, and their first line of wireless is included in that price. And on that first line of wireless, you can obviously opt to take unlimited talk, text, and data for that first line. So it's a really good price, fantastic price.
I noticed, looking at, you're very comparable to the others. I just did a quick average. It was about 80, and you're right there at 80.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, and I think,
appreciated that you kept it about the same as the others. Some were a little less, some were a little more. So
yep, yeah.
kept it right at the average there.
And important to note too, Google Fiber is at 70. Important to note that Google Fiber is only available in very select areas of our most populated cities in Utah, i.e. Provo and Salt Lake. And so, they're definitely utilizing some economies of scale, and they're a huge organization. So, but we feel much better about the price point where we're at now. So hopefully consumers do as well. I think we're getting close to the end. Oh, a couple more slides, just to mention really briefly. I'm not sure if anybody noticed as you're out traveling throughout the state. Our crews have actually been utilized by other entities quite a bit the last 6 to 12 months. We've been involved in some UDOT projects, deploying conduit for them. A couple of the specific projects is a project on I-84 going from Tremont to Snowville, about a 40-mile conduit build. And our crews did that one, did a phenomenal job. And then UDOT also through their contractors subcontracted with Strata to do some work on I-70 from Cove Fort clear over to Salina. About a 70-mile build, is that correct, Dave? 90. And so this really came about because there was a significant chunk of CARES Act money that was given to UDOT, and frankly, it overwhelmed their contractor capacity, and then their contractors came to companies like Strata and basically said, we need help. And Strata was able to deploy a lot of the unique resources and assets and equipment that we have here that we use on projects like the Daggett Fiber Project, 70 miles of some of the most difficult building and construction you can imagine. We go down and leverage those resources. And frankly, they were just phenomenal jobs for our crews to be a part of. And UDOT and many contractors really have, from that project, have stated that they really want to leverage Strata more for those opportunities. So we anticipate that you will see Strata trucks outside of the Uinta Basin, and we want you to understand that we will likely entertain and pursue those options when they meet the criteria of building value for the cooperative and for the communities that are our anchor tenants. So if we can do them profitably, and if we can do them in a way that does not slow down our efforts here, we'll probably pursue those. I think last slide, one more. Another specific project we want to mention is there have been some cities that have reached out to Strata based on conversations that have taken place. Providence City is one. They wanted to deploy their own citywide fiber network. There are some options with Utopia where cities can, kind of punch a button and Utopia will just come in and build the entire thing for cities. But many city managers and councils are catching on to some of the flaws in that model, namely that Utopia retains ownership of the whole network and the cities are required to backstop the bond payment. And so cities take all the risk, they don't get any of the upside. And some city managers and councils are seeing that as a very negative model. And so they're reaching out to companies like Strata and saying, can you help? And so once again, we're entertaining these options and pursuing them when they can kind of check these boxes for the cooperative, where they can provide profitability and diversification and help us to achieve greater economies of scale, which should lead to, lower pricing for our consumers and just an overall better service. So that concludes what I have. Scott, Dave, I haven't given you any opportunities. Would you like to add anything? I apologize. Okay. Do you have any questions that we can respond to or concerns?
I just want to state that, I sold my house about
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. We have heard quite a bit of that anecdotally, as you all are hearing as well. We've obviously anticipated this day would come at some point in the future where telecommuting would be much more common, but we've all seen how it's just been spurred right to the forefront over the last 12 months. We're once again a little bit relieved at the work that has been done, but it also just it illustrates the necessity of us getting it done, the remainder done as quickly as we possibly can. So we appreciate your support once again. Yeah, we've had that question quite a bit too. We did see an initial spike but nothing that was concerning to us. We typically forecast bandwidth consumption and usage about a year out, about where we anticipate the consumption rate will be in 12 months. And as you can imagine, the compounding rate of bandwidth consumption has been astounding. If you were to look at our charts, it would blow your mind. But to answer your particular question, because most of the increased usage was happening during off-peak hours, which is namely, 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. when kids were at home utilizing bandwidth, it was really a non-issue. There was just no issue at all. So, and we're talking about, for those who may be unfamiliar, we're talking about the bandwidth capacity leaving the Uinta Basin, connecting the Uinta Basin to, the internet. And so we did see a significant bump in that off-peak usage, but it was still very, very minimal relative to our overall capacity. Any other questions?
We appreciate all the work you guys are doing. I know it's a tough job, and trying to get all that fiber in is a challenge, but we appreciate the effort. And like I said, I'm only a block away from Lagoon, so
Well,
I think
we'll see what we can get done, huh?
I think you better.
Oh, you're in the Skyline FDA. It's coming this year. So,
Am I?
yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, we showed you a map.
I saw
I guess I should have
Skyline, but
pointed
that's
that out.
above me. I didn't know it was coming down, so.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Well,
Any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to help you.
Tyler, I appreciate you guys coming
Yeah,
tonight.
thank you.
Honestly, you guys do a fantastic job
Thank
for our
you.
community
Yeah.
and the services that you provide. Like Vince said, it's pretty amazing. And to get that price point as well, as low as you have, especially understanding some of those economies of scale, that's pretty impressive. We
Yeah.
appreciate all you do and look forward to all the growth and expansion and not only in our area, but others. And that's just going to make you a stronger, more stable, viable company and appreciate the vision that you guys have and your obviously leaders have at Strata. So thank you.
Thank you guys very
Yeah.
much. Appreciate the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, appreciate it.
yeah.
All right. Gun range project presentation. Do we have some slides for that? So this is something that we've had in concept for quite a little while. It's something that we've gotten some steam with over the past couple of months, and we've got some partners that are involved, and Strata being one of those. Actually, Andy Adamson has been out there with us looking at the gun range and given input. We've had the hospital there with us. We've had DWR, the different departments, police departments, sheriff departments throughout our community, and obviously then private interest as well. And so this is a layout of how that gun range will look. To the north or to the top of the page, you can see where the mouse is pointed. That is a proposed long range shooting range there. We've worked with Moon Lake and others to make sure that we're staying out of right of ways. They're trying to secure an easement for a power line that would have went through the eastern edge of that. We've negotiated with them and they've decided to go ahead and move that. Cody, do you know, have you heard any feedback on that or?
Why put our transmission engineer into contact with nature? But both sides, it looked like we could make a compliment. Shouldn't do that long range part. It should work out pretty good.
Good. So, and I don't know if I mentioned, but that's 1,000 yards shot. So that'll be out to 1,000 yards. That's what would. Yes, thank you. That's for competitions and things like that. That's basically the minimum that you would need. And then to the south, you can see there's a smaller shooting range there. That's the 100 and 200 yard that'll be proposed. And then if you can go to the next slide. This is down off the hill a little ways, and this will be a cowboy shoot / pistol shooting range. And this will be open to the public, not 24/7 because it gets dark, but you know what I'm saying. It's free and open to the public anytime, and that'll allow us also to have pistol competitions, cowboy pistol competitions, and those types of things. We've also worked with Utah State University. Troy Cooper, he has a group of youth, I guess, that are doing cowboy shoots, pistol shoots. They use 22 rifles, and so that would accommodate them as well. They've given input on that also. And so, next slide. That's very hard to see, but that's further south Currently, there are some trap chutes, you know, clay pigeon throwers and things like that on top of the butte right there. Those will be taken out because they actually do shoot towards some of the other areas that we're going to be shooting at. So, but we'll have a trap up there. Jeff, have you been working on this too?
Yeah.
Do you want to give any input on that, or?
No, it's like, that's, it's,
Okay, I think we pull those up. So this will kind of give us an idea of how from the ground level, how that'll look. Why don't you go ahead? Yeah, just start with the top where it says gun 5. There you go. So this is kind of an idea of what the pistols range will look like, the cowboy shooting area. We'll have a few pavilions in there. And this is obviously the gold standard. This is something that we may not get the funding for, but we want to shoot for the stars. So we're going to plan it in there, and then if we can't get the funding, we'll dial it back and build what we can. So that gives you a little bit better view of that pistol range. Want to go to the next? This is just without any of the things. This is more the layout in that same area. Let's go down to the long range right there. And this is more how that long range kind of will end up and look. You can kind of imagine that. So one of the things that we did mention to the partners and those that are involved is Roosevelt City doesn't have a lot of money to build these types of things. We have the property, obviously, and that's available. We did talk with DWR, and they're pretty optimistic that we can get a fairly large grant for a project like this. And so that's what we're basing the majority of this construction on. We also have commitments from even the private sector on dirt work and those types of things. So we're pretty confident that we can get this built, at least the dirt moved and everything else, without spending a lot of Roosevelt City money, having the tight budget that we do. But we do have a lot of interested parties. And so the reason for bringing it to council tonight is we would like a vote to move forward as far as fundraising and submitting grants and those types of things for this project. So
It's gonna cost the city an FTE of some kind to help with supervision, management, cleanup.
those are some of the things that we're negotiating. That's a good question, because with any project, the O&M is the ongoing O&M is something that we have to look at. So we're working with, one of the good things about having Troy Cooper with USU on board is he knows all about weed control and those types of things. We're looking at that. Some of the partners, the Wildlife Foundation that Kevin Richards has started is doing really well. He's committed to help with the upkeep and, maybe contribute monies annually to help with that. We've talked with Alan as far as oversight, sending a police officer out once or twice a day to kind of just monitor what's going on. And then as part of that, we might have to get with Strata. I don't know if you have any lines down there, but we're looking at putting some security down there, cameras and things, so that we can see if somebody were to come and do any type of defacing our property or, damage or leaving junk or in garbage out there, we can get license plates and we can kind of monitor that way. So if you're not familiar with the area just north of our property, there's a lot of people that go out there and shoot right now. It's kind of unsafe, and it is a disaster as far as trash and garbage go. And so we're actually going to be talking with the property owners to the north, and we've been in communication with Ballard City to try to help with that issue as well. If they can fence that off, make sure people don't go there, they're forced to shoot where we're at. We're monitored. We have surveillance, those types of things. I think we can take care of some of their issue and problem there as well. So the O&M, we really are trying to keep it down. There's not a lot. Weed control. The Cowboy Village would be one that would be the most O&M if we end up building some of those facades and, ongoing paint and those types of things every couple, 2 or 3 years. But we are talking about having sponsors sponsor those, and they would be responsible for the maintenance of those. So For example, if I purchased an area and I had my name up there and things like that, I would be responsible to maintain that. And if I didn't, then it would become available for somebody else to purchase. And so,
If we move forward with just approving, it's okay to go for the grants and things. You know, in terms of doing it or not, again, I guess I'm
No.
just concerned.
well, and that's
I'm
the
just
thing.
concerned about if we end up having to add an extra employee and the budget, if it's tight. And I know we also have a park that, you know, at the hospital we're looking at. We also have, we're doing a budget meeting coming up here in April, and I know we have some things, and I'm just, I would feel, I'm not opposed to it. I would just feel better if I knew more about budgets and kind of where we're at going
Jeff?
into the next year before, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So we do have some numbers, Jeff. Did we send over those numbers for the construction? Okay. Yeah. And I agree with you, Don, and I've mentioned that. That's why I mentioned to not only the private but public partners that if we do this, this has got to be something that's paid for, not by the taxpayers, you know, and it's kind of, we've been working with the DWR as well as far as dedicated hunter program, them donating hours to that. And so one of the other things that we've done is we've negotiated with the hospital to this point, and they have sent us over a contract that we're looking through right now, but we dialed that project way back. That one started to, I guess, I don't know the exact words,
Escalate.
but escalate very quickly. But we did dial that back, and some of those concerns were addressed. Ryan's done a really good job at communicating our position on that and where we're at financially, so that we're not overwhelming our budget with those types of things. This would be no different. We look at this as once it's built, we don't anticipate any funding coming directly out of our budget, but we look for grants, private donations, those types of things. Obviously, the land would be donated for the project, which is a like-kind investment. But
Well, I'm not unsupportive. Like I said, my concerns just looking
sure,
ahead at the
Eh.
budgets and if, because the thing of it is we take this on down the road, it could end up coming back to the city as having to provide FTE
yeah.
or even part-time someone. And you know, I want to
So-
make sure we're all understanding that going forward. And I'm not opposed to looking for grants. I just want to make sure that if, you know, something were to come up, we could get the grants. And then if we decide not to go forward because something comes up, that we can, you know,
Sure.
maybe look at, I don't know if that's even possible.
No, and I agree. Our tentative date to kick this off was earlier in the year. We were thinking April, but because we saw the opportunity for grants, we wanted to push that out. So that, I guess tonight we would just be approving to move forward with grant, you know, getting grants and fundraising and those types of things. And then once we get that together, we can also have a better idea of, we'll have a better idea of what the O&M would be. And then that would come back before the council for a final approval. So this is, I was just joking before, this is not a final approval, just a preliminary approval, saying that, yeah, we're gonna move forward with this. And as far as getting everything in line and see if we can make it viable. And if we can, we'll come before the council for a vote. And if we can't, you won't hear about it again, I guess, for a while.
Okay.
So, yes,
May we ask a question?
sure, go ahead.
My curiosity, is it all revenue negative or are there any revenue positive aspects that could be involved?
That was gonna be my question.
Yeah, and so that's a good question. There's things that we can do when we have competitions and those types of things. We can obviously have people reserve the site. And the other thing that's going to bring, you know, Buckskin Hills is similar. They have competitions there all the time. It will bring, it's hard to determine the amount of money that'll bring in our area, but it will benefit our businesses and our tax base that way. The other option that we had, and I know the officers are a little sensitive to this because there is a place where they shoot up there right now, but we could make that reservable as well. And if you reserve it, then that comes at a cost. However, that's one of the places that Strata has invested some money and built some things up there, which we really appreciate. They've been a great partner. So we want to be sensitive to those donations and what they've constructed there as well. But I think that should be part of the overall plan is how do
You
we,
can see that there might be revenue positive in this.
sure, absolutely. Yeah. And the great thing is that it's not a real money pit. So we don't have to make a lot of money to make it revenue positive. Yeah, there you go. So, but that's the thing is we don't want it, we don't want it staffed. Obviously that would be quite a burden and, money wise. So we want to make it as good as we can, as cheap as we can, and just something good for the community. We've had a lot of good positive feedback throughout the community so far. So any other questions? Okay, we have a motion by Councilman White to proceed.
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Jeff, that means we got the green light. Means we don't, yeah, I mean, can't be taken back, right? No. Just kidding. So we'll move forward with that, and as soon as we get really close to pulling the trigger, we'll bring it back before council and have some of those things put together. And I'll make a note of that. Maybe we can also put that in our thing is how we can generate a little revenue from that. And I know there's other entities or people that shoot and go to these competitions and see kind of what they do and see what they charge and things like that. And put together some numbers. Yeah.
I wonder if it could be like the pavilions at the park. If they're available, people use them. If someone wants to reserve them, they just someone goes out and puts a sign and then people know that that's reserved for.
Yeah.
And that could be a fee for, to
Agreed.
help a little bit. I don't know, but I like I said, I'm supportive. I just want to make sure it's as revenue neutral as possible or even revenue positive for the city.
Absolutely, and that was our goal as well. So we'll make sure that happens. Okay, Cedar View Water Agreement Addendum Approval. So that's something. Let's see, is Grant here? Thank you for being here. So this is something that was sent over by Cedar View. We have Judy here with us tonight with Cedar View Mount Well. This is an agreement, an addendum that they wanted us to sign. Obviously, I can't do that without council approval. And so we've had our legal counsel read it and review it. We've talked about it in some of our meetings, but we need to present it to the council and talk about what this means for the city and our relationship between Cedar View for the next 30 years, basically is what it's looking at. So, Grant, I'll turn some time over to you. And
is somebody from Cedar View here? Okay. The first thing that we were looking at is what Cedar View's timeline was, because we weren't wanting to cause them any problems or delay funding of the loan that they were getting. The information that I've got back today, and I need you to confirm this, is that the loan has closed and that they're not waiting for this to release the funding. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, but they need it as soon as we can get.
Okay. As I've gone over it, I have reviewed the history going back to the original agreement, and there's been, I think, 3 addendums since the original. So the original was executed in February of 2010. There was an addendum in October of 2013, one in March of 2018, and then this one, which would obviously be March of 2021. I noticed some problems, not necessarily serious problems with the original agreement that I think both sides would want to fix. The biggest one that I noticed is that the original term was discussed in the whereas clauses, which is just a preamble to the contract. It's not binding terms. I think that both sides would want that to be moved into the body of the agreement so that it would be binding. The other thing that has me wanting to slow this down just a little bit and have some more in-depth conversations with Cedar View is some changes, recent changes in the law, which are requiring Roosevelt to create a water service area, which we've never done before. And since we're right on the verge of doing that anyway, I would like to see it reflected in a new agreement. So if they can wait for 3 or 4 weeks before you turn something back over to, I assume it's CIB that needs evidence that you have water through 2051. What I would propose doing is that we just work out a new agreement, fixing the problems that I've noticed as I've reviewed the history, and then we would submit the new agreement to CIB, but it would take 3 or 4 weeks. Okay.
I would have to give it the attorneys.
Okay, well, my recommendation to this council is that we ask Cedar View to do that, see if they can get some additional time. If they can't, then we could revisit this, but there are some things that need to be fixed, not just simply signing this and being good until 2051.
So, I guess I need to talk to you, so I know what
Okay,
we need to fix, because this does need to get fixed. We need to have something that say, hey,
we understand that you need it, and we're trying to accommodate that, but I have an obligation to make sure that Roosevelt City is covered too. And my review of what you're submitting, I have some concerns.
and it's the same, it's not the same.
Very similar, but it's extending it, which extends the life of the problems that I found. It extends the life of the problems that I found for an additional 6 years.
We have our work meeting coming up at the beginning of April. What day is that?
6.
April 6th. So we'll be meeting on April 6th, and that's a couple weeks. We can have a pretty good idea, I'd imagine, of what you're able to do or how soon you need it, and then maybe we could work out some of those details of what we need to have in that contract. I know that's crunching it a little bit, but that gives
I think that's doable.
a couple weeks.
Yeah, in fact, when Ryan and I spoke earlier, that's kind of what we were hoping to, or the date that we were looking at for having a proposed draft. And then Cedar View would need to be able to make comments back to us on it. And that's why we were figuring maybe a month out on actually a final version ready to be signed.
This is the bond that
It'll be a totally separate agreement. And what we're proposing that we do is use a template that we've already been working on. Similar agreements, like the one that will be coming up with Ballard here before long, and trying to make them all match.
That was one of the things that we found, and Ryan especially found, as more and more users are desiring water from Roosevelt. The need to, make a template or make them all similar. It would be beneficial to Roosevelt City. It'd be beneficial to those that use the water from Roosevelt City, and everybody's put on a level playing field and treated similarly. This is really driving me crazy. But I'm not even talking that loud. So anyway, that was the thought process behind it as well, is just making sure that those agreements are standard basically across the board. Similar to what we've done also with our staffing.
Table with them. It's 2 weeks and it's out. He's approving, you know, our position. Giving it.
And I'll continue to work with Cedarview, and so will Ryan. If there's something that we realize is kind of an insurmountable problem for them, we'll try to come with an alternative solution. We're not trying to leave them in the lurch. We're just trying to clean all of this up at the same time. Yeah, and we had some questions back for Cedarview, which weren't answered until today.
So is that, yeah, I'll move the table until April 6th. At least on mine.
Must not have updated that version, so that's on me. Absolutely. So, Public Works Department submitted a grant for safe sidewalks a few months ago, and Kurt, we pull that agreement up. So basically, this is going to be a 75%, 25% split. So we are awarded the grant. If you would jump down the numbers there, Kurt. So UDOT's going to commit $35,750, and the city will be committing $13,000, and this will be for sidewalks on Highway 40 between 305 West to 100 West, and we have a diagram of that one. So yeah, it'll be adding new sidewalk all the way through there.
Was that 5 at least?
It'll be other whatever the UDOT standards are through there. So yeah, yeah, we won't get to decide. That'll be all UDOT. Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure UDOT's going to require that anyways. You know, so basically what they're going to do is say, yes, here's the grant money. We'll have to take it out, bid it out, and then once the bid's out, we have it back. We'll have to take it back to UDOT. They'll approve the plans, and then we can go ahead and start the build. These grant funds are available now. So I just need a motion from council to go ahead and approve that. I've checked with Kurt with finances. We have the funding to go ahead and move forward with the 13,000. Is that correct, Kurt?
Yes.
All right, next up, we'll talk about the policy. So in December, we embarked on the revising and rebuilding our entire policy manuals for the city. We are glad to say we are done, and we now present it to the council for approval and implementation. This process was very long and lengthy. Alan played a major role from the police department side. Grant put in many, many hours. Kurt, all the department heads, Lee, everyone put in a lot of time to get this policy manual built. I can tell you now it's about 100 times better than what we had before. It's 226 pages of awesome reading, so I hope you've all read it. If you ask me what changes are different, the whole thing's different. So if you ask specific questions in specific areas, I can address them and we can talk about them. But I put it out about a month ago to council to review. I've answered some questions for Dawn and David that have reached out with some questions. But if there's any other questions, I'm more than happy to address them before.
So I have one other question. Lee, you know, sometimes, I don't know if it needs to be in policy, or not, sometimes people stay later, but then come to this meeting. Like, come in later, another day, or another day. Do we need to put that in somewhere like that, a discretionary?
No, so that's already pretty much taken care of with policy. So like if she was to come tonight, she would automatically just schedule adjust that time off on.
I just didn't remember seeing that.
That's not policy. That's kind of up to the department heads allowing them to leave.
And I'm okay with that, I just didn't know if we needed that as a policy, or if that's just the office and each, supervisor can do that.
Yeah, that's just really up to the department heads to manage their employees how they need to. One big change that will, in this one, we've eliminated, comp time. Comp time, after talking with Kurt and having multiple meetings about this, it is not in the city's best interest to continue comp time. We are actually gonna go ahead and pay whatever hourly rate at the time. The reason for this being is with comp time, you hide budgetary overages in fiscal years, meaning that comp time could be rolled from this year into 2022, and you do not see what actual budgets are. So department heads, when they're having to pay that overtime, tend to manage their budgets, and you're not getting that comp time overtime. So that's one of the bigger changes that's coming out of this policy manual after working with Kurt. We've decided comp time will not be offered after this is implemented. Employees will be allowed to carry that for one fiscal year into the next cycle. So they'll be offered to either be bought out or they can carry it and use that over the next 12 months starting in July. So they'll be given that option on how they want to use that time. Because it's kind of mixed, some want to pay out, some want at the time. We figured we'll give them, you know, the 12 months or 14 months or whatever it is to facilitate whatever they want. So that's one of the bigger changes in the policy update.
Also notice. One plan I was.
Yes.
I did like the wordage, I like the. Show the reviewing those.
That's correct.
Started back.
Program. Previously. Alexa will push out the state and federal policies to us. It sends me a KMS notification. Then I'll go ahead and review it, make sure our legal is okay with it. It's then pushed out and the employee will be required to acknowledge that. It also gives us stats and data on who's acknowledged, who does not. It also puts out daily training bulletins for the civil side. It's 12 training modules a month. It takes 2 or 3 minutes, so we'll have to go in. It's a test on a policy, it gives them a scenario, and they have to go in and complete that. So, I mean, if it ever comes back to an audit or something, hey, did this employee know it? Well, we're gonna have the documentation of the program. He acknowledged it at this date, this time, and he had 3 policy questions on this in the last year. And so, there would be, I'm gonna be honest, that staff, if they're not acknowledging doing it, there will be, it'll start with the basic, it'll be a verbal counseling and coaching, hey, you need to get up to date on it, and it'll be progressive disciplinary as in our policy. And if they're not getting it done, the policy will go through up determination.
Well, I think that's fair. You know. You know, where they're not.
Now, I can tell you right now, with our new HR manager, the policies will be followed. He is a very much, whatever policy, even he's told me, hey, we're doing it wrong. I mean, he is very much, he reads the policy, he reads it for what it is, and he follows policy. So by having that HR, and he's also, he can't be here, he's actually doing a shrimp class tonight for human resources, so he couldn't be here. But he's also very excited for the updated policy and having a very clear process for disciplinary performance evaluations and all those things we did not have in our last policy. So we batted that around with Grant and everybody, and we just, so are you, when we surplus something, it has to be over $1,000. It come basically inventory. So the reason we did that is because if we inventory everything at $1,000 or less, that's all we would be doing is inventorying with staff. Because there's so many items that are under $1,000. Really, the city, we need to protect the major purchases. So say we have heavy equipment down at the airport, things that may disappear. I'm less worried about the $50 items or the, you know, those types of things. And you have thousands and thousands and thousands of those in that category. So we had to set it somewhere that was manageable. I mean, we can always look at moving to a 500, but I felt $1,000 was kind of that threshold.
I guess the reason why I asked is that
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're familiar with the state or surplus laws on electronics now. 95% of all agencies are not sending electronics back out for resale. Matter of fact, so with working with Spectra on our computers that we had here, it was more costly for us to wipe those drives and get rid of those old ones than it was just to destroy them and get rid of them. You know what I mean? So you got to look at surplus properties. How much time are we putting into selling the property? And then how much time are we putting it on websites and doing those types of things? You've got that break-even point. And so really, computers and electronics nowadays, you're ripping the hard drives out and they're going to the trash because it's more expensive in man hours to actually list them as surplus property than to actually sell them, because you're only going to sell for $5 or $6. But it takes one of my staff, 2 or 3 hours to get all this stuff listed. The cost ratio is not there for those types of items. Yeah, and that's an easy fix. And through surplus, it takes 2 people. So it'll take the city manager and the city recorder who's responsible for it to deem it as salvage or trash. So it's just not one person making that decision per policy. It's 2 people have to say, this is no longer viable property. And then they do an inventory, whether it was scrap, if it's just going to the scrap yard, or if it's been thrown away. So.
But I would like, for instance, like somebody like
Mhm. So that could be handled in the standard operating procedure. We're already doing that. So any new electronics, I actually report through actually track. Strata also tracks all of that stuff for us too. So we actually have 2 mechanisms for laptops and tablets. They're kind of a unique thing that we'll handle in an SOP and not a policy.
really concerned. I don't read stuff. This policy,
Mhm.
So the council meeting, say, yeah, I think all the employees should apply like this. When all the lot of employees.
So this was actually sent out to department heads and they actually played a role in this. For instance, Public Works, they asked for certain criterias. So this was, we've talked to them about their portion or sections of it. One of the things was 2 hour call, they used to have 2 hour minimum call out. So if they're called out to fix something or do something, they actually asked us to put the 2 hour minimum in on that. So every single, I mean, Lee was involved in the social media side of it. So department heads were included all the way through the process. And department heads were also given a copy of this. And I think we addressed it in staff. Did anyone have any concerns or those types of things with the policy? So they have been very much included, and Brent can probably attest to that.
Wasn't anything in there.
That's fine. I'm more than happy. It's a simple fix. It takes me about 2 seconds to fix that. So if that's what you guys want to do, we can approve it on the motion that that be changed. And I can just go in there and go ahead and fix that with that new property value.
So many scenarios. All employees.
So real quick, if you understand local minutes, I probably interrupted you. If you notice the language in there, what did it say? It said may, okay? If you read the context, there's different categories. So if there's a shall in there, that means you will be subject to disciplinary. May means it's discretion of the body. So meaning, I have that discretion. If there's an exigent circumstance outside that, that allows discretion saying, hey, it's okay for you not to do that. So you've got to understand the language of how lexical is written. If it's a shall or a will, that means this will happen. With the may means you could be disciplined. So there's discretion there that is given to the administration saying that. So say somebody just say they're at the movie theater instead. We're in a different scenario that they could have been recalled. But if they're out with a family member being sick, or they are doing a flood of their own, that's where that discretion will come in. And that's where common sense comes in with policy and administrative policy.
Those are defined too.
They are they are defined at the very start of the policy. So at the very start it says, should, that means you will to administer discipline. This is a may. It leaves it the discretion there up to the department head and the managers to make that determination on their own.
There it is. Right there. Back up. May, shall. I saw the same thing, but I saw that earlier. Saw the may. I thought, well, I guess it's discretionary, but it does sound a little.
And so it leaves discretion there, but the reality is in government work, this is a standard throughout government. from wherever I've worked. We have CERT teams, CERT volunteers that work with the public. But so instance, I was on a fire in a former organization I was with, all city employees were recalled. And that was every staff because we had a fire up on the mountain and it required all hands on deck. We had public works out doing stuff. We had administrative staff doing stuff. I mean, when it comes to those types of emergency, I mean, we're a small city. If we have a natural disaster or something, we really need all hands on deck if it's available and they're not part of the disaster. So. So we can leave it at, we could leave it at 1,000, but we could just do it as a standard operating procedure with each department that, department heads will track up to, or that range that we're not tracking. We could just put that in standard operating procedures. So, if you move it that direction. I would agree with that, yes.
We don't care. We're gonna take the money and tap it. We're gonna buy stuff. And we're not gonna track it. And primary things, $600, $900. Okay, we just. You know what I'm saying? You just wanna make sure. Okay.
That's fine. I'm comfortable with that, but this is just a value we came up through the policy and going through it. I'm more than happy to entertain and put into that policy. Really, this is whatever the council wants in there. I'm more than happy to accommodate that. It'll be a lot more laborsome when we go to do the property inventory, which is a project right now. Eventually, hopefully, get on. We've got other things that are more on top of the list we've got to get through first, though. But I'm more than happy to entertain whatever number, dollar value you want to put on that policy. So if it's 500, great. If it's 300, I'm fine with whatever. Just remember, the lower it goes, the more burdensome and time that will go into it. Well, your lawnmower's going to be probably $1,000. I mean, really, most of your computers are going to be over $1,000. So that's why a lot of that inspector tracks all those anyways. So. So we can address this, like two separate ways. We could address it just in SOP stating that, department heads will keep track of an inventory of all their department assets, no matter what value it is, you know what I mean? But anything by policy, big stuff, we will inventory on the city tracking, and then have anything under that track on the department. Yep. I'm gonna throw Brandon here. What do you think? What do you think's a good value to set? Because you have all those types of things. Would it, I mean, laborsome wise and actually doing those types of things, how cumbersome is that gonna be to track all your weed eaters and mowers and? Yeah, I'm just,
when it comes up.
That's probably put
I'm actually fine with dropping that down to 500 and just making that clean cut in policy. I'd rather, I mean, it'd probably be easier if we just put it into policy, because then it's not on a department level. So I'm actually comfortable just putting it at 500 into policy and just doing that. I'd probably prefer that.
I would want to actually just 500 as well. And I could probably put that same procedure.
Yeah, they should be keeping track of everything in their department. That's correct.
So they're already doing that, right?
So to a certain extent, it just depends on which department it is. We've got to get a little bit better at tracking that information. So for instance, smart sheets, you've seen them a lot today. That's how we do council meeting now. It is my intent within hopefully next year to have to move all inventory of city property to a smart sheet. I can go from so if Brent goes out and purchases a new item, we can actually do a copy of the invoice, take a picture of it, and enter all that information into that spreadsheet through a form, and it's just submitted and automatically goes into that, into his department as, and then you can put whether it's been sold, salvaged, or surplus, to where those types of markings. That's eventually what I'm looking to go to. We just haven't had the time to get to that. Real quick, when do you want implementation? You want to start first of the month, you want to start it upon passing? We're good at whatever, I can push those out. So start saying April 1st, is that? Okay, if you want to do that, that's great, and we can work with staff to get it out. So the way policy currently works is anything with budgetary implications has to come before the council. Anything outside of that is handled at the city manager's level and generally doesn't come back to the council. And so that's how currently the way it's set up. There's a different process you want to use, you can do that. But on a day-to-day operational side, it's a problem because you don't want to have all these policy changes hitting your council. I'll promise you this, I am pushing out changes. Mayor and council will be first to know if I'm doing those types of changes. If anything with budgetary implications will always have to come before the council. So if we hear something. Absolutely. Yep, and then same with staff. This is a new policy coming out. I've already talked to them and staff. If we have concerns with it, then we can go back and readdress it and fix it. It's easier if we can fix it on that level and just be done, so you guys don't have to deal with it. Because there's gonna be quirks in the policy saying that, hey, this doesn't fit our city, we need to adjust and change it. But I'll of course make sure the council and the mayor in the loop if those changes are coming through. Yes, so. Again, this is the best.
Wait, yeah.
Let me preface what I'm gonna say a little bit by saying that the treasurer and the person who's up front, approximately 30 to 35% of their time is devoted in dealing with residents, with their garbage cans. And up to this point, the way it works currently is for every residential can, well, for the first residential can, the city collects $19, and $17.50 of that goes to King K. And the other $1.50 comes back to the city to help to pay for some of those administrative costs. It amounts to about anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500 a month. But for the dumpsters, we have a 350 cubic foot dumpster, a 3-yard dumpster, a 6-yard, and an 8-yard dumpster. We collect 55, 70, 120, 130 per dumpster, and 100% of that goes to the city. Does not recoup any of the costs for administrating, billing, and so the proposal for discussion is that the residential can, nothing will change with those. What the suggestion and what we're wanted to suggest is that the council consider, and these are monthly fees, these are just monthly, for 350 cubic foot, it's a 5% administration fee for each amount. So if they have a 3-yard dumpster, 5% of 70 would be $3.50, and then $6.60. That would amount to approximately $12,000 to $13,000 more per year to help cover some of the administrative costs. The treasurer, we pay for billing, we pay for collections. It just helps for the city to. We still won't break even with that, but it helps us to get a little closer. Primary, yeah, any.
That have marked, that have marked these possibly.
Yes.
One of the things that I look at.
Yeah, they pay, and of the 19, they pay the city recoups $1.50. And then if they have additional cans, the more cans they have, the city would recoup.
So is it the same percentage? 1750.
$5.60 for the.
So that would be five.
560, sorry. Never questioned. Yes.
This doesn't affect now, like in the construction thing,
Those are built directly.
So this is just those that have modern premises. Now what about this, this affects schools as well?
It would affect, and this would be per dumpster, so if, for example, there's businesses that have 3 of the 6-yard dumpsters, their fee would be $18. That's the highest any business would pay in the entire city. And I believe there are 2 or 3 businesses with 3 dumpsters, but the vast majority of the 3, 6, well, we only have two 8-yard customers, but the 3 and 6 yards, the vast majority of those have 1 dumpster. Or sometimes they're divided up with different businesses.
Hearing. Getting anything.
Briefly mentioned that this still,
Well, if you figure 30 to 30, well, and we spend, how much do we spend every month, Ryan, for our billing, freedom mailing? Is it 1,400? And that includes water and sewer, garbage. And then treasurer time, it would be hard to talk to those costs. So,
So now the process. They will notify us. This. All we are doing is.
that example, we get 10 calls. Treasurer doesn't even have to call. This is a way to help bring it closer to where we're breaking even. I think. This is a conversation I had with Lee. Lee spoke, this is related to the secondary water issue. Lee spoke with somebody very concerned. By the time she explained the reasons why he got off the phone with this resident, he was totally understood.
what we're looking at doing.
So I actually took it over to the police department. This is the one that. Right. This is the carpet. The best. So that's what the PD selected. Also in this budget, decided to do it. So, also we treat that. So, all the swap.
It's $50,000 budgeted this year for capital expenses for the admin equipment. City hasn't spent a dime of that this year, so. I'll tell you, if I didn't feel comfortable with it, we wouldn't be here tonight. For both. Hey, Alan. Alan, could you grab the mic, please? I just got feedback.
I think there's certain areas that could be done like that, where you have cement and some linoleum and stuff like that, but I think for offices and the general, a squad room where people do reports and everything like that, it's almost always carpet with other, police departments, and I think when Mayor said it right, we're trying to recruit, people that are working and in good standing. So they're actually, a lot of them are coming from a police department. When they come in and see that, it's gonna help. And I think that most of that would be carpet, the hallways and all that stuff. We do have a lab and a few things that we could potentially, do as something else, but for the most part, it's carpet.
This is a. Say it's not on.
Well, we kind of had a poll thing, and I think Sherry knew the most, and she thought it'd been 12 or 13 years, somewhere in there. I think the building was built in '93, and I think it's been replaced once. And they didn't replace everything. And there's some different colored carpets in some of the offices and stuff. So they, yeah. Right. Why was the shelter built into the structure? I've just seen it. I've just seen it.
No, this is.
We'll do what we did over here.
Yeah, there's holes in everything that need patched in the walls. And we've already done the tiles. And we've painted the cells. I mean, we're working on it. said. And the other thing, I'd be glad to take anybody over there and check it out. What we're trying to do. Yeah, exactly. Or was this supposed to go, say, to the other company?
And then this lobby right out here. So if you guys.
Say, let those who work in the building.
I know at least.
I'd say do all.
Sweet. All right, so this is gonna, so we got two things we're gonna kind of be, we're gonna talk about the preliminary police budget, pay scale, and we're gonna talk about the vehicle lease. So this is a vehicle lease versus purchase that we're gonna go through here. Oh, yeah, that's all been, yeah, so we've been completely getting this down to the science on a lot of this stuff. So me and Kurt actually spent a lot of time working on these numbers and getting as close to accurate as possible. One of the things we did is we went out and met with Vernal's CFO and sat down with him on this. He threw out one caveat here that we have to be careful with the lease program. That was, the program currently sits over the fleet. They let them kind of put what they wanted into their trucks. They started adding seats and all those other things. It started pushing their leases high. So it would be my recommendation, we keep that back at the city administrator's office. Everything would be standardized coming in. We're not adding leather seats, we're not adding all that stuff. He says that was one of the control things where the leases started going up when they started adding those things. Outside of that, he said this program was phenomenal, it actually saved a lot of money. Let me kind of break this down here a little bit. So the police F-150, Blue Cap, STX, that's the best reselling vehicle out there. It's proven through the resale value on those was not even close to the F-150s. As a matter of fact, you got 8,000 more for the F-150s than they did for the Rangers. That being said, this kind of breaks down what our leases would be in operating costs. So this is over a 4-year period, what it costs us for the lease, and this is over this purchase, this is what it costs us over a 4 year. So we're getting to lots, especially for our city fleet, huge cost savings. Our lease on a city civilian is $3,500 a year. That's all it costs us to lease that vehicle. So scroll down a little bit. Over a 4 year period, so annually it's going to save us $31,900 a year. Side of the program. This also doesn't count into maintenance. We lose all maintenance on all vehicles because they'll all be under warranty. The only thing that Vernal put on their cars was on 2 trucks, they put front tires. That was it. So you'll have your normal maintenance if you have brakes and or oil changes. That's just common, but you're not going to be going through transmissions, injectors and those types of things. And so I spoke to another agency and they have vehicles that are 3 years old, 4 years old. Well, it was $3,500 for a transmission, $1,500 for an injector. So those are things we don't have anymore, and we've hedged those costs. Another thing that's not shown in consideration is Bank Corp does not make any money on sale of the vehicle or purchase of the vehicle. This is a line of credit at, I think it was 2.96 or something like that. That's where they make their money. So basically they set your residual on your lease. So say they set it at the 33,000. If they sell it for 38 or 39, they give that money back to the city. So Vernal on their trucks that they just got back from the F-150s, they sold it for 8,000 more than what it was. So their leases were set around 75 to 8,000. They actually only paid annually lease for their police vehicles $3,500 to $3,600 a year, because that money came back to the city because of the high resale of the F-150s. Another thing that's not accounted in these numbers is fleet management, which is a huge cost, especially for the PD. If they have to buy that vehicle, take it down to BLS, that's 2 hours, have all that stuff installed, they have the back and forth time, they have to do all that themselves. Pay for it, you say, oh, this is the truck we want, this is the build, they take it, get your decals on, put everything in, say, come and pick up your vehicle. When they go to trade that in, you drive the old one back, they do the sell of the vehicle and everything, so we don't have man hours listing the vehicles, selling the vehicles, doing all that. And we've got hundreds of man hours in fleet management, and it's also going off the books. So that is also not associated with this. But overall, another thing too, we have over half the fleet. They're 6, 7, 8 year old vehicles. Those are everyone's vehicles. Mileage that really need to be replaced. Just on the police department side, we have $450,000 in vehicles that need to be replaced, and that doesn't include the civilian side. So to even replace, even if we move to a 25% purchase, we would never catch up unless we did a major capital expenditure to help us make this up. Another thing is part of it, we have to move to the 800 megahertz radio system because the 500 is going away. All of that's going to be taken care of with the lease because the new vehicles rolling out will be equipped with those. And we're going to talk about radios money. So that's also going to help with that transition. We're not going to have to spend that. Any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
We talked about the radio, that radio is a approximately 12-year lifespan. So after 2 years,
So the cost goes down.
lease,
So basically that's management. When we talked to Vernal about this, basically what they did is they say one officer's getting high on their mileage, they will take that and switch it to somebody else. And then that way the miles will go to the vehicle that's on the lower one. So that's just a management issue. Vernal's most, one of the term was 19,000 miles. So on 2 years. So that's as many miles as they put on. It's 19.
maybe in 2 years, 24,000.
To me, it would be my recommendation to push this. We do half the fleet this year, so I've scheduled for 11 F-150s this year to come in. And then the highest dollar value vehicles will be sold this year. Because the longer we go, the less value they are. And it would be my intention, I've spoken with Ron and Kirk, all the sell of the vehicles that we figured somewhere between about 200 to 350,000 will regain out of our current, and we put that into a fleet fund. And we actually do a budget, put in that fleet fund every year. So when we have capital projects like snow plows, those types of things, we're not going to reserve, we just have a capital fleet fund, and that's what we'll use to make our major fleet purchases. So that will all come back, it'll stay in fleet, and that's what we do. So our newer vehicles will be gone first, and then 12 months from now, the remainder of the vehicles will go. My intention would be to replace the 2 1998 vehicles with some of the older vehicles. So that would be my recommendation. Let's move to the lease program. Yep, yep. Well, no, some of these are, some of these are civilian vehicles. Over to, that's where it comes to management of vehicles. Most of these should be 7 or 8 months.
Well, if you take the 2014 at 98,000. I mean, well, you can't, but you can't seven. So if even at 7, that's over 12,000 per year. I was looking through the list, doing the numbers, there's only a couple in that, most of them are under. Or right at the 24,000, you said you would just rotate.
Yeah, exactly. So we have some officers that live in the city, right? So they're not gonna be getting those mileage. The mileage is gonna be those that are living further out from the city, that's where we're gonna put those miles. And that's just gonna be up to the chief to manage, okay, this vehicle's getting higher mileage, let's put that with the vehicle. And the nice thing is, vehicles are the same, so it doesn't matter either way. Exactly, so you can swap those out that way and manage those mileage. And the nice thing about the leases, if we're seeing in those 2 years that we were higher, we can actually pay a little bit more for those and bump it up 2,000 or 3,000 miles, and we can adjust those if we need to. So the leases are very manageable. They'll just charge us a couple extra $100 a year or whatever, we can push those mileage up. So there'll be some adjustment, but overall, I mean, Ron and Kurt, I So I just to let you know, I let the mayor know today, I hedged my bets, so they stopped taking fleet orders about, was it a month and a half ago? Big corporate approached me, says, you need to place an order. I go, I can't, cause I haven't talked to council, and what they told me was, if you place the order and you don't want them, we'll go ahead and sell them off or do something else with them. So I've already placed the order for the 11 to come in, they'll be coming in at the end of May, 1st of June, they're already on their way. Alan, we've been trying to get the cost down on the leases, so he's worked with his guys to get all the lighting packages, the cages, the new radios, all the equipment that needs to be into them, and we've got those, the builds were pretty high, we've got those all down and narrowed in, so really, all the equipment is ready to rock and roll. The only thing we need to finalize is they're playing with the graphics for the decals that are going on there, and then we'll hopefully get those back here real soon, but it's all ready to go. It just needs your approval, and I just need the permission from the council to start moving our fleet from what it is now. It'll be probably a 2-year process to roll them all out. I just need your guys' blessing to start that process. One thing so smart, educate. You know, when we took that into consideration, I'll be honest, this wasn't the cheapest model. I'm gonna throw it out there. There was another model we were considering. The Toyota Tundra crew cabs were actually substantially cheaper, but when it came to service and local vendors, we wanted to make sure the people here in the city were taken care of. So, it wouldn't be fair to go out and do half of our fleet in Toyota crew, or Tundras, and then our services down in the valley when we have local vendors, you know, here that can be servicing our vehicles. So that was actually taken into consideration to where, yes, we're actually gonna pay a little bit more, but then our services are all done here in the community and in our city. This was a discussion that we had among staff, and we felt that, yeah, it was a little bit more, but we felt this was the better direction to go. Yep. Yeah. And another thing about this too is finance guys love what? They love consistency. So on the purchase program, they've got to come to you and say, hey, we need 5 vehicles. That comes out of capital projects. We don't know when that's going to hit. On this, this is how much is budgeted to complete every year. This is what our cost is. We don't have that unknown. Okay, what is our warranty cost? What are those going to, we don't care anymore. It's all under warranty. And so this really helps the finance side of it to help us budget every year. And those items actually don't show up in the police department's budget, or those types of things to take from capital projects. Well, the leases will now be budgeted out of every one of those departments instead of coming from a capital project, which is vehicles. So now you actually know every single, what gas in that department, everything, you'll know exactly what your budgets are for those departments instead of, yeah, we bought a vehicle 6 years ago and then went to the water. That's all you know. That's how we're set up. Whereas this, yeah, we know exactly what our lease is. We're changing a lot of line items in the budget to reflect this stuff because it hasn't been tracked that way. We went back to look at the maintenance stuff. The way it was being tracked, there's no, I mean, it is just all clumped into one great big fund. And so it's very difficult to get those maintenance funds. And so I think overall this is going to be the best direction.
Need a motion. I'll vote if you're ready.
All right, so let's jump into, you pull up the pay scale. So the next two items are going to be kind of commingled in on this one. So one of the problems after speaking with the chief was pay scale. I've heard this from outer people saying our pay is not conducive with our surroundings or competitive. So me, Kurt, and Alan, and Brock have been sitting down to say, hey, what can we do to be more competitive on the pay scale on the police side? So we sat down and we come up with this pay scale. So basically what it's going to do is officers will start at $20 an hour, and then in the 9th year, they'll top out at $27.50. I'll give you some similar notes on this one. Duchesne County starts at $18.50, and they get a 50-cent raise every year. Vernal starts at $19, and they top out at $28.38. So those are kind of your comparable agencies that are out here. So we've got to be competitive with them. So basically what we're saying is, another problem with the scale is the chief, when an officer came over, just assign them the number. This is what you're going to make. This takes all of that out of it, makes it very easy for HR to administer this program. So if you have a 5-year officer, he goes in with the 5-year level. Doesn't matter what agency, and it's based on how many road years you have. And all the way, even if you have 16, we'll be talking about it at higher. So there is a cap on that. If you have 16, we'll talk about it. Then corporals will make 50 cents more an hour. Sergeants will, once they're promoted, will go to that bottom one and take 4 years to top out. Yeah, lieutenants will start at the bottom once they're promoted, they'll take 4 years to top out. So this will actually make us the trend makers, and everyone else will have to come to us because it takes, basically it doesn't compress the scale. We're at the same thing with everybody else, like compressed it. Instead of taking 18 years to top out, it's going to take you 9. So it's going to have to take half the amount of time to get there than the other agencies. Yeah, so actually quite a few, so you already have a lot of them that are already there. So I budgeted, so we put it in the budget as they're making 4 or 5 years already. So we're budgeting, so when you budget for an FTE, generally budget somewhere. So, so they would not get a COLA until they top out, then they would get whatever performance COLA after that. So at year 9, then it depends on how we want to set it. If we want to give them a COLA after that, we can, or we can just say out of 20-some 50, you're going to top out unless the market shifts. So it depends on how you want to do it. If you want to give them say if you're topped out, we'll give you 1% every year after that point. It's however you guys want to set this up. That won't change it all the way over. I don't think the cells right now are programmed to do exactly that. So let me show you. Scroll down, Kurt. So the increase to our current budget in the cell adjustments. That's what adjustment is. Here's
We haven't, we were prepared for this question. What we've done is we've gone through so many other areas in the city. Airport manager benefits, that's what positions.
We'll have to figure out. Yeah. So this. Sorry. Here's another thing too. So also this matrix added another FTE. Like so right. That. So with the salary increase, with officer, that's the additional salary and benefit. 75 that would be equated to the police department. Let's jump over to the general budget, Kurt, real quick. We also have some costs over there, but the additional costs are your leases and stuff that are going into the police budget. You normally wouldn't have it be in capital projects. So some of this, so that red up there is going to be the addition to the police budget. So we're going to jump from 1 million or 1,798,000. Our police budget is 2,026,000. 950. That number is going to radically into that. Now the vehicles that we would be purchasing. Another thing we've done is uniform allowances. We've got to get those up there because our officers are buying their vest and doing those types of things. $600 does not cover the equipment they need. So we moved, that's actually not very much. We moved that rate up to $1,000 per officer for equipment a year. And then we'll also have some other costs with Spillman. We've got to move our record management system and stuff like that because FatBot is going away. So a lot of these costs are incorporated in there, but that is expenditure this year with moving funds over to the police department. Be about $250 million more over to the PD. In the budget process, we're probably trying to stay budget neutral with the budget, so we're not trying to increase it. So once we get the budget kind of narrowed in and done, we're hoping we're just taking those funds away from everywhere else. We're not increasing the budget any more than it was last year. Sorry. This wouldn't take place until, I wouldn't even implement this till July 1 of next year, next budget. So we're not gonna, we would, this basically how this was, if you approve this pay scale, it would give us something to recruit with, say this is what we're going to. I think that will help with recruitment, but this will not implement till July 1 as part of the new budget cycle. No, we'll do that in the general budget. I can do that. We can go in and say if 50% of the staff are at top out, this is what it's gonna be. 75%, this would again, if everyone's top out, this will be. Most budgets, how they. So most budgets, they budget in the middle, so you can always plan on those being higher, and you can always plan on those being lower. And, another way you can control that too is, some of the things they do is when you're doing your recruitment. No, when you're doing your recruitment, right? So you don't want all senior people in your department, because then they're all ready for retirement. So when you're doing your recruitment, you want those 2 or 3 year guys that you wanna bring on, you don't want all senior people. So you've gotta be cognizant of the administration to make sure you're not maxing everybody out. And you're bringing in guys that are 2 or 3 years and doing those types of things. So I just want to also say that you mentioned to me weeks ago, say 23%. Yeah. I think it was, what was our budget recreation? No, it wasn't that high. It was 30, 34, somewhere in there. So general budget. But I really like. See more money. Is, say, so I spoke with Josh and Quinn Venning over at Naples and over there. So I asked them what their police budgets were. Naples, 55% of their budget is police. Quinn was at 45, I think, is what so he's right around 45% is public safety. And we're at 23%. I think a good realistic goal is to get this out of this budget year. Next year is going to be the struggle because we've scraped everything we can to get to where we are now. And I think I've had conversations with the mayor. We wanted to be up to 16 FTEs. That'd be 2 more allocations next year. That's going to cost us about another $150,000, $160,000. And I think that's a realistic goal. We just got to figure out how we're going to get there and figure out where we can save in other avenues over the next year to facilitate that. I think it's a good goal to move forward to. But again, this will all come up. Hopefully we'll get the budget narrowed down here. Hopefully we can have some more conversations at the retreat on this and we can get some more numbers kind of more narrowed in. But I think we're going the right direction and does anyone have any concerns? Would you like the way any problems to pay scale? Would you like to see something different? I mean, this is all open to what mayor and council want to do with pay for the officers. I think And another thing we looked at too, when I worked with Ellen, is we started to stretch that out a little bit, and people ended up going backwards, and we would have to redline people in the scale. So I tried to stretch it out as far as I could without putting current officers in negative. And I think I had it up to the 10, but there were some officers that were below that line, and I had to do some adjustments. So I wanted to take care of the guys that are working their butts off first right now, out there on the street, to make sure everyone at least got a little bit of a raise in this, and this was the way to do it. And so. I think when I had it stretched out, so if I bump it out 2 years, I think the difference was just very minimal. No, they're actually, yeah, they're higher than the 2880 now, because that was an old mark. Yes, sir. So they're probably starting exactly, yeah, they're probably, they got a 4%, my understanding. So they're probably 19 something, so we're just barely above where we're starting.
Say something about
Yeah, go ahead.
the whole thing about Roosevelt City is you can actually live in Roosevelt City and you can work for Uena County and you can work for Duchesne County. So the goal in what we're talking is, I'm saying that no, you don't have to move. You don't have to move. You can live in Roosevelt and you can work in Duchesne County for Duchesne County Sheriff and Uena County Sheriff. Those people that are great talent and that are in good standing, we want them to apply. They don't even have to move. We want to be that competitive. We want to be that police department. So that's what we're looking at. And this does it. Along with the vehicles, carpet, paint, and walls, because, and we work close with Duchesne County. Duchesne County, they're in our police department all the time. So we can get some of those guys. We're not motion.
Ultimately, we'll have another discussion about this in the retreat. We can get those forecast numbers for you, and then if we need to tweak it in the retreat, and really, this will be really fine tuned. I would love to have a motion say, yes, we're gonna commit to this pay scale, because then we can actually start the recruiting side of that, you know what I mean? You know what I mean, saying, hey, if the council approves this, and this is what we're gonna go to, I can have Lee put out a press release, hey, here's our benefits, here's our pay scale as of July 1. I can tell you that's gonna do dividends. But that's. So. That's correct.
Is there a way? So that
The problem with phasing is compression. Because when you start to do phasing like that, you have the lower officers that are catching up to the senior officers. If you're gonna do a scale adjustment, everyone needs to go to the scale that they're on, or do you have compression issues in the scale?
Yeah, but so it's close to 1,000.
So let me ask you a question. So now I'm in the recruiting process, right?
This year. Year back.
I agree, so.
I would say look at that and see if it makes it a 2-year graduation.
And I think if we do the phase, correct, I don't think we're gonna save maybe what, 10,000 out of that, if that. Well, it depends on where they are in the market. It just all depends on which ones are the higher dollar amounts. And how that's gonna go into play. I see what you're getting at, so I see what you're saying is so you're saying, take this amount, so basically we're gonna do a 2-year process, take this scale, you're saying, you're gonna split that in half. That's what they will be making, starting in July 1. July. That's actually not a bad idea. Just, we'll take this scale, it'll take us, we'll give them half. Or, I mean, or do we just bite it off? I mean, either way, I mean, there's, I think what we need to do is let's get through the rest of the city budget and see where we are sitting. And then I think we'll be able to make a better decision after all the other department budgets are done. Because I would rather, I mean, if we have it in the budget to do it, just make the jump. I think we just rip the Band-Aid off and go to it, but if we don't. Yeah, this year's, I mean, this year's gonna be easier to do this. Next year, if we're looking, well, that's kind of a mix, because we're looking at the other 2 FTEs next year. And so, I mean, if, we're gonna run into that problem next year if we're if we take it off and buy it this year, we're now just dealing with the new allocations next year. If we're now getting to that budget cycle to where we promised this and trying to do those FTEs at the same time, now we're fighting against ourselves again on the other side. So. Yep. So I think we, want to know what, I think it's a great discussion. We'll get the forecasting done. But I think we can leave it with that. And then I think once we get the totality of the budget done, I think if we can stay cost neutral and do this, I think we pull the trigger. But if our budget is going up considerably more than we thought, another thing we've got to throw into right now too, we don't have numbers on, and I've got to be upfront and honest. I do not have benefits numbers for Gallagher yet of increases. I don't know if it's going to be a 2, 5, 7. That also has to be taken into consideration with the budget. So that may have implementation. We may have to do something like that. This is. So there's some variables that I can't account for right now. So I think I think we're going in the right direction. But I think if it does come down to budgetary, I think we can do it. I think we push forward with this. But if it doesn't, I think that's a great idea. We can phase it back and take some money out of the budget that way. So. Great.
But we have shut-offs.
So now speaking of that, now it's Alan's turn to talk about, I believe, crime stats. Crime stats. Scott. No, you don't get it. You get it.
What's that? Good news. Okay, we know the police department appreciates the city council, everything that you do. We want a culture change too, so we appreciate it. As far as numbers go, we had 913 calls for service. We did 28 citations. Those numbers are down than the other ones. Traffic warnings though were up quite a bit. Tickets and then accidents were down a little bit. I wanted to go through. Did you guys have any questions on these when you were looking through them? I've got a couple. The amphetamine possessed was down from January, but it was about the same as February a year ago. The child abuses, which were incredibly high last February, have gone down quite a bit. Sick criminal mischief was 9 last February. It's 5 this time. Domestic violence went up from a year ago. Driving on suspension was also up from last month and a year ago. See, down to intoxication. Last year was only 4. We had 7 this year. It's pretty close to January too, which had 6. Possession of marijuana, 9 in January, and was down to 3. It's 5 last year. Sex assaults, for whatever reason, in January, find that one, was 7 in January, but we had 0. And that was comparable to last February, which was 0. 7 incidents. Not people involved, it's 7 incidents of sex assault happened. No, not women. No. 7 separate incidents, they can be not related to each other. Is that what you're asking?
Same person.
Yeah, yeah, it could be, but it was on 7 different. It, it could be, but but probably not. Most of them are totally separate. Simple assaults were up big time. We're up to 13, 7 last year in February and 7 in January. Theft was up compared to January, but it was down compared to last February. And warrants is a little bit of a anomaly now because the jail's not accepting a lot. So we advise we arrest on some. We only had one last month compared to 10, 13. Is there any questions on those? Okay, thanks guys, appreciate it.
So we have to make a transition from the 500 megahertz over to the 800. The 500, Alan can speak on this, and radios is a non-supported network after the state's going to stop supporting it. Jump should have made gradually over time. That did not happen, so we're going to have to make that jump. Sooner or later, we're going to work with Kurt. We have COVID money that we can go ahead and use this for. And so we figured we have some money there. We might as well use the COVID money and go ahead and make that large purchase. We actually have another grant that's going towards this too. They've already got 2 of those radios that they've got on another grant. We did this one, will provide 20 more radios. 5 will be going to the fire department, and 15 will be going to the police department. So this will be split between fire and police. So really, the dispatch center is waiting for us to get those radios, and then they can flip the 800 on. The radio quality is 10 times better than 500. I'll let Alan speak a little bit more on this.
Yeah. Well, most police departments, Duchesne, Vernal, and UNT County, have been kind of mixing. They've been buying dual bands, so it does both the 800 and 500. And they've been kind of playing with it, but nobody has been ready to jump. We don't have any, so we haven't mingled in it at all. But Roosevelt City and Vernal City are in the best places to do it because there aren't going to be any dead spots. They're in the cities. The counties, they're a little bit concerned because they're still going to have some dead spots. Roosevelt and Vernal is just ready to go do it. With the vehicles that we outfitted, those have 800 radios coming in, so those will have them in it. These will be handhelds. And dispatch is ready to go. They're just waiting for somebody to flip the switch. Might as well be us. It's going to happen. We've been talking about it for 10 years. 10 years. States. Right, and that's the other thing that it's a good timing too, is that especially for our handhelds, they're to the end of their life. Those need to be replaced, and we don't want to replace them with 500. And that's the reason why they
Anyways, CC pushing this, the band's going.
exactly, and yeah, instead of having to do what would it cost to do all the cars and equipment? It would be $200,000.
Move me.
said they're waiting for the sheet report. Said it should be. It's built. So those are some things we're working through right now. We ran a problem the other day, with the jet not being able to be fueled. That problem has been mitigated. So we only had we had a card reader error that was taking certain cards. We have an override card that was with a certain individual we had a hard time getting hold of. We now have that in a lockbox down at the airport, so any of the staff can now use that override card. We're, training wise, like on fuel testing and stuff, we're gonna have these bumps here and there because we're transferring the knowledge from Sean over to Public Works. We're trying to get police out of airport operations and other things so they can do police work where we need them. So we're gonna have some bumps here and there, but the training process for all that has already started taking place. And we have a lot more Public Works people that will be trained on fuel testing, how to deal with, fueling, the card reader stuff. We figured out a way how they can pay for it. And we've got to get a phone number where they can call the front desk and just do a purchase over the phone. And we figured out how to do that through Express Bill Pay the other day, to where if it doesn't accept a certain card, and they can call directly here. We can just run it and process it through here. So there's going to be some bumps while Public Works takes over, and getting everyone up. But once we get them all spun up, we're going to have a lot more people trained, and then we don't have that knowledge gap anymore. So if you lose one person, that's okay, because we have 4 or 5 other guides now that are spun up on that. Really, right now, Kirby's kind of put Clyde over that, the mechanics down there, all that stuff, fuel testing. They're really trying to get him spun up to take over a lot of those operations. So that will be part of his duties down there. Is my understanding is the direction Kirby's going with that. So we're doing standard operating procedures as part of Lexipol, and we have departments right now writing standard operating procedures. So when this does happen, it'll be in the Lexipol manual. What do I do if this happens? Everything is going to be step by step out in that SOP manual. We'll hopefully have that up and operational by October. So.
Expansion.
No. Let's first just start with this. Carl's last day is the 25th. I want to thank him for his time here and appreciate his friendship and working with him. It's been amazing. Just want to extend my gratitude and appreciation. This will be his last council meeting. So, thank you again. So, on a different note, council meeting, we need to talk about that because we're canceling the one in the third week in April. That's not going to happen. We're going to try to do a short council meeting during the retreat. So it'll be very, very small, only priority stuff that we're into it. And then we'll do a retreat. So because of the conference down in St. George, it's very difficult for you guys to get here on Tuesday night. So that's kind of that. I think that's what you wanted to do, correct? On a different note for that retreat, I need the council to do some favors prior to that. I need you guys to decide and kind of figure out what are your top priorities for 2022. So I talk about this all the time. What are our top priorities for 2022? I would like to know the top 5. That way departments can associate their goals around those top 5 priorities of the council for 2022. So think about what you guys want in 2022 and we can address that. Outside of that, that's all I have. Is there any questions?
Sixth, right?
Yes,
Suggestion.
absolutely.
This might sound weird, but anytime I hear tree, taking a trip somewhere,
Council work meeting.
public seem
What it's called that's fine. That's just my terminology. So,
tight budgets.
yeah, council work meeting. So the council work meeting, we'll discuss it. So that would be like your 5th time this year down to Puerto Rico? So let's plan on nailing those. We look forward to the retreat. Department heads, we should button that all up on our next staff meeting on the 30th. Have that presentations all ready for you guys then. Hopefully we can come up with a good budget strategy for next year and get our priorities set and keep on moving forward. I think we've made a lot of progress in the last 6 months. Hopefully we can keep moving in that direction. Other than that, is there any questions I can?
We don't see Yes, you are.
so that so it's our intent for that retreat, Kurt, we're in the next 10, sorry, in the work meeting, sorry, it's just bad vocabulary. Kurt, in the next 10 days, we're gonna have a preliminary budget done by the time he leaves, and then also another budget reopening template done, because we're gonna have to reopen the budget to make some adjustments for this current year. So we should have those budget numbers by the work meeting, and so we can have a better discussion of what needs to happen there. Is there any information that the council wants to see in that retreat? 'Cause basically how it's gonna be set up is they're gonna talk about current projects within the city they're working on around. And then they're gonna talk about the priorities that they need. Is there anything outside that the council wants? Go ahead. So I want I don't know if we talked about the 800 South project. It was not funded through, the board didn't select the 800 South project by the cemetery. So I think we're kind of on a pause with the going forward with the cemetery. We're gonna try to reapply that fund in about 2 years, right, Kurt?
Actually, that's maybe next year, maybe.
Year after that. So it's our intent, we wanna incorporate the cemetery with that 800 South, it's gonna have some cost savings. So that was the only thing that will not come forward, is the cemetery expansion. We're probably gonna put a pause on that and see where things land next year and look at that, unless you guys choose to. Paying attention. So, is there anything else? You wanna make the best use of your time? Is there any other information you may want department heads to push out in that meeting? This would be perfect. School district. City. Something I really want to start working on. See, the school gym. Should be. The outline. So it shouldn't be. Make the other. So on this real quick, so I pulled the MOU we have with the school district right now. It was signed in 1993. And I don't, so I believe the school, I'm sorry, the city's holding up their end. So part of that agreement was they were supposed to let us use their ball fields over the schools. They have not been doing, correct, Brent, in many, many years. That was part of the conditions. So we have been using their gyms. Another thing, we didn't have an aquatic center back then. So in the MOU, the only thing with pool use
was pool parties on the outdoor pool. So the MOU with this school district is currently out of date and it needs to be revisited. So we need to sit down and get all parties involved and figure out what a good solution is. I'm having staff run some numbers and do those types of things. We're getting to it, but I'm waiting for some stuff to come through to make sure you guys have all the information so we can make good decisions with that MOU moving forward. So it's already in the progress. It's been acknowledged. I mean, the fact, me and Brent have talked about this multiple times just in the last 2 weeks on what is going to be best for our residents and how we proceed forward. So I would say we probably should have that information for the next 4 or 5 weeks, gathering some information, and then we need to sit down and have a discussion on what direction we need to go with our facilities and the MOU with the school district. Yep. Yep. Is there anything else? Any questions? That's all I have.